People Before Profit TD Paul Murphy joins us now after he was detained not once but on 2 occasions in Egypt while participating in the global march to Gaza. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. You've been back for a couple of days now. So can you tell us, first of all, the global march to Gaza, what was it?
This was a people-powered movement from around the world, about 4,000 people from 60 different countries who came together in Egypt with the idea of marching to the Rafah crossing to highlight what's happening in Gaza, in particular the forced starvation. I mean, basically, since March, no food, no aid, no water, no medical supplies have been allowed in. So the genocide that we've been seeing for 20 months has been getting worse. And kind of the chokehold position is at Rafah. That's where there's plenty of aid. There's not a shortage of aid, but it's not being allowed in by Israel. So to draw attention to this, to put pressure on Israel, but also to put pressure on our own governments to stop their complicity. And even, I mean, the most disgusting thing is that in the last 3 weeks, aid has been used as a weapon of war by Israel. Effectively, they've allowed in a tiny trickle under their own control, and now consistently, every single day, they're shooting people down. 51 yesterday, 37 the day before, 140 in the last 24 hours, when they're queuing for aid. I mean, it's unbelievable.
How did the march go?
Well, we didn't get the march, is the truth. We tried to get as close as we could. Different people got to different points. I mean, I was part of a group. There was 50 Irish people in total. We were in different kind of clusters of 3. So my cluster of 3, we got to a point, a town called, a city, 1-point-something million people of Ismailia, where we met up with, there was about 60 other people there. By the time we got there, the police were waiting for us when we opened the door in the Uber and took the passports, and then we're trying to get people onto a bus, and then other people, 1,000 people, were kind of stopped and then detained at a checkpoint a bit further down the road towards Cairo.
So yours was a coordinated effort to try to get to Rafah. Obviously, the police in Egypt, who a lot of people would have thought would have liked people to go to Rafah, had a coordinated effort to stop you. So what happened the first time you were arrested?
Basically, we just got out of the car and then the police were there. We thought we'd gotten quite far. This was to the kind of meeting point that had been arranged. And then they were there. They took our passports immediately. And then a few hours later, tried to force people, and eventually did successfully physically move people to get them onto buses. Some people, not me, were, hurt, were kind of beaten by the police in trying to do so. And we were then taken on buses and kind of small vans to the airport. This took a very, very long time because they didn't go back on the route we came because there was 1,000 people who similar things were happening to along that route. So we went this kind of long route, which took, 6 or 7 hours, and then we got back to Cairo airport on this Saturday morning. And then, we were expecting to be deported at that stage, but they just let us go. The police had disappeared. The airport police didn't know what to do with us. And then we were able to make our way back into Cairo and attempt to regroup.
You filmed a video. You had a video that you posted upon your arrest. You'd filmed it before.
Yes.
You knew you were going to be arrested. You knew this was going to happen. And it's led to some TDs saying this has more been about, as opposed to a march to Rafah, a march for publicity for yourself. What would you say to that? Because
look, this is not about...
What were you expecting? Were you actually expecting to get to Rafah?
I'm not sure if I thought we would get to Rafah. I thought we'd get further than we did get.
We didn't get far at all. You just got off the bus.
We got out of Cairo. That was 3 hours up the road from Cairo towards in the direction of Rafah. This was not about me. I was a late joiner of this event. I wasn't a core organiser of the event. These are ordinary people, everyone else involved. There was one councillor from the Social Democrats, and no one else involved was an elected representative. These are just people who are horrified at what is happening, want to do everything they can. So I was one of 4,000 people. The reason I made the video was actually because people had been detained in the airport on the way through and then deported. And that was what that was in kind of anticipation of, that was a possibility. But actually, so on the Friday morning when people were arriving, the Thursday morning when people were arriving, there was detentions. But then, and we thought that's quite possible at this stage. But then actually we were able to get through the airport. So I hadn't really anticipated that happening. But look, I want to use my position, yes, to have publicity, not on me, but to have on what's happening in Gaza. Because particularly now with Iran and Israel's assault on Iran and the threat of regional war, there's a danger that eyes go off what's happening in Gaza when actually it's getting worse. Like, I think Israel is using the cover of Iran to increase the number of daily killings taking place. And I think everybody, really, but in particular, people in the public eye, people with public positions, should do whatever they can to draw awareness to this and to build pressure on Israel and our own governments.
You can see from increasing, temperature checks are being taken in countries all around the world, and it feels like the populace, none of these, no one seems to be. There was another one done in the UK recently, certainly in Ireland, that everyone's like, this has to stop. But our governments aren't doing anything. Our government, Spain, Norway, they've come out and they've said, OK, we've tried to do something. Are we doing enough? We're only a small country. A lot of people would say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think across the world, and the same is true in Egypt, there's a gulf between the attitudes of people. And to be clear, the ordinary people in Egypt were very, very supportive of what we were trying to do compared to the actions of the government. But similarly in the West, people are horrified. But let's be clear, Israel could not be doing what it's doing in terms of Gaza, in terms of Iran, without the active support, the financing, the arming, the political support from the West, from the US, from the European Union, from Britain, from Germany, from France. So the Western governments, the big Western powers, are absolutely complicit in what's happening. Ireland's case is a bit different, where it's good that we have a government that is saying that it's genocide, that took a long time to get there, that has recognised a Palestinian state, but we're not doing enough. And we need to fully implement the Occupied Territories Bill. We have to stop the weapons that have been flying through our skies. The government knowing all about it for 9 months illegally, weapons, thousands of tons, go through our skies to be used by the Israeli military
part of the
and the central
EU, they
bank.
have to have a unified response on this. We have to be part of a bigger picture on this. The Irish government, as you say, have stepped out away from the union in a sense, but they're part of this group. I mean, there must be more to it than this, as you're saying, that there's a huge amount of public. Everybody wants to see the end to the killing and the war, of what is going on over there. But there must be a reason why the EU and the government, there's more to this story. There must be.
I mean, the more to it, in my opinion, is that the big Western powers support Israel. I mean, Israel serves a function in the Middle East.
Why, whenever these killing is going on, they can't
because they
agree
don't,
with that? So what is it?
They don't place an equal value on lives in Israel and Palestine or on lives in Ukraine and Palestine. That's the horrific truth. I mean, you look at what's being prepared for now in terms of a potential attempt at regime change in Iran, repeating what we saw in Iraq in 2003 and the disaster that was. I mean, still 20 months into a genocide, you have the European Commission president saying that we defend Israel's right to defend itself, Iran is the main source of regional instability and so on. And like, the truth is, the real reason in Ireland that we're not doing all the things we should be is because of the relationship with the US and not wanting to rock the boat. But we can take action. The Occupied Territories Bill, I mean, there's an International Court of Justice ruling from last year, which the Irish government then said this changes the picture on the Occupied Territories Bill. We're compelled not to have trade with the occupied territories. The fact that they've called it a genocide has legal and moral implications. You have to do everything you can to stop it.
There's news breaking that an Israeli hospital has been damaged and injuries reported after direct missile strike by an Iranian missile. So that's one thing you said, that it's distracting. Lives again are being lost in other countries. 0896 111 111 to get in contact. But the German Chancellor has said that Israel is doing our dirty work. That is something he is quoted as saying the other day in relation to Iran. For our Occupied Territories Bill, American companies can face restrictions or prohibitions on operating in certain foreign countries due to US laws and regulations, particularly those related to economic sanctions and anti-boycott measures. So in this country, if we do something against Israel, it could have ramifications for our multinational companies. Do you think that that is an issue here?
I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that's being put out to effectively scare people from doing
anything.
What is right, you know?
You don't think that
these are, to be clear, this isn't even. I mean, I think there should be full sanctions on Israel. I don't think we should have any trade relations with Israel. This is simply about those settlements which are internationally recognised under international law as being illegal, not doing trade with those. This is now 6-7 years in the making. Francis Black's bill. Originally, Fianna Fáil was supporting it, and while in government, they were opposed to it, saying it's unconstitutional or against, European law. Then that changed last year with this International Court of Justice ruling. But now what is being attempted is to water it down. So they're attempting to distinguish between trade in goods and trade in services. But trade in services is actually the majority of trade that now takes place in the world, and would cover, for example, Airbnb. So you can go to Airbnb right now and you can rent a house in a house that is now owned by an Israeli, that is a Palestinian house that is robbed from the Palestinian person 5 years ago, 10 years ago, in the last number of months. And we don't think that we should be facilitating that.
It just feels the death toll is just getting higher. The more we hear about this aid operation between the Americans and the Israelis, of which the head stepped back. He quit his job in relation to this, and they're just lining up, and more people are dying as they're trying to get food. No one seems to care. Do you see an end to this? Honestly, do you see an end to this? You were over there with people trying to do a people's movement.
I mean, I think all of us are shocked that it's still going on 20 months on. You know, there was a brief moment of a ceasefire, and then Israel broke the ceasefire, and since then, since the breaking of the ceasefire, is when they've had a total blockade on aid, and then, like you're saying, using this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to pursue ethnic cleansing. I mean, ultimately, in the long run, I think there will be a Palestinian state, there'll be liberation for Palestine. I think, like, that's the just thing to happen, and ultimately I have confidence in the power of ordinary people. But look, we are up against very, very powerful forces, because, like I said, it's not just Israel. It's the US, it's the EU, it's Germany, the biggest, most powerful countries in the world support this. Even if they have a little bit of distaste for Netanyahu or for the level of civilian deaths or whatever, they're doing the dirty work. And so that's why it's incumbent on us. You know, it's not just about going to Egypt or whatever. It's about doing stuff at home, joining in the local groups, contacting your TDs, joining the protests, doing whatever we can in each of our countries to stop our countries supporting Israel and to get them to do the most they can to try and stop what's happening.
People for Profit TD Paul Murphy, thank you so much for joining us.